Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. When I entered the house, the jingle of my keys shattered the unusually thick silence. Normally, I could hear Lily bustling around, but this time we were engulfed in an unsettling stillness. My gaze fell on a half-empty bottle of wine lying on the table, with 2 glasses beside it, one of them stained with lipstick. My heart started racing, but I tried to ignore the agonizing sense of dread gnawing at my insides. The kids were outside, that much I knew, but who else had been enjoying their time here? I noticed the staircase, catching faint sounds from upstairs. An inner voice warned me not to go up, but I ignored it. With each step, the faint thuds from the upper floor grew clearer, each movement pulling me towards something I feared to confront. When I reached the top of the stairs, I paused, my heart pounding in my ears. The bedroom door was slightly ajar, a thin strip of light cutting through the dark hallway. Inside, I heard the sounds of entwined bodies, labored breaths, low gasps, the slap of skin against skin. It was raw and primal, leaving me paralyzed, as if struck by lightning. My thoughts scrambled, trying to make sense of what I was hearing. One part of me urged me to burst in, to confront whatever lay behind that door, but another, more rational part held me back. I needed clarity, to gather the full picture before making any rash decisions. So, I stood there, motionless, my breath quick and shallow. The sounds from the room grew louder, taunting me, as if each second stretched into an eternity. My fists clenched into tight knots, my knuckles white with tension. My mind raced, weighing the possible scenarios, considering my options. Should I storm in now, wait for more proof, or just leave pretending I hadn't seen anything? Every option felt like a losing battle. I thought of our children, of everything we had built over the past 13 years. 13 years of marriage, shared hopes, struggles, and how it could all come crashing down in this very moment. The sense of betrayal twisted like a knife in my gut. I didn't knock. I didn't hesitate. I flung the door open and it swung wide without a sound. My vision narrowed, the edges of the room blurred, and my focus honed in on the bed. Our bed. The very place where we had spent countless nights together, where love, fights, and future plans had taken shape. Now it was ruined. Defiled. The sight hit me like a brutal punch to the stomach. I gasped. There was Lily, her skin slick with sweat, caught between 2 men who had no business being there. The mayor, damn the mayor, was growling like an animal, his hands gripping her hips tightly, his knuckles white with strain. And the sheriff, his mouth was pressed hard against her neck, his fingers tangled in her hair as if she were his possession. For a moment, my mind short-circuited. This couldn't be happening. This monstrous scene unfolding before me couldn't be my reality. Not Lily, not the mother of my children, the woman I had trusted and believed in for so long. The atmosphere was thick with a toxic reality, heavy and suffocating. I struggled to breathe. Her moans, sounds she once reserved only for me, filled the air, as if she were oblivious to my presence. They treated her like an object, as if she were nothing more than a tool for their pleasure. She could hardly be my wife anymore. I couldn't move. My feet felt anchored to the ground. Inside me, rage burned, but it was overshadowed by something colder, an icy numbness spreading through my veins, freezing me from the inside out. The weight of it pressed down on my chest, tightening with every second, but I couldn't look away. I was a spectator to the slow collapse of everything I had known. The mayor was the first to show any sign of weakness. His eyes widened, locking onto mine, filled with pure panic. His features contorted, his lips dropped, as if the ground had suddenly vanished beneath him. He stood there, frozen in an awkward stance, completely bewildered, not knowing how to react. He looked like a deer caught in the headlights, stunned and defenseless. He continued to move mechanically, utterly unaware of the chaos unfolding around him. The sheriff reacted a little later. He slowly lifted his head from her neck, as though the air around him had thickened. When our gazes finally met, his eyes were wide open and full of disbelief. His fingers were still tangled in her hair, as if he didn't know how to extract himself from the situation he had gotten himself into. But it was Lily's response that made the strongest impression. She didn't notice me at first, not until the last tremors of her panic had subsided, and when she finally did see me, it seemed as though time itself stopped. Her mouth opened in a silent scream. Her eyes widened in a horror that words couldn't describe. But it didn't matter what thoughts raced through her mind. Whatever pitiful excuse she might have tried to come up with, it was too late for that. I stood at the door, watching the tragedy unfold. It felt like I was just a spectator, detached from the horrors playing out before me. Each heartbeat felt alien, as if it didn't belong to me. But it was there, pounding against my ribs with such force that it seemed they would crack at any moment. And then, I became aware of the weight in my hand. A phone. My finger touched the screen, activating the recording feature. The camera was aimed at the bed, capturing every detail. The sweating body of the mayor, her, them, together. And suddenly, out of nowhere, a rough, sharp laugh escaped me. It surprised me. It was a sound I barely recognized as my own. At that moment, Lily sharply turned her head in my direction. Her expression was exactly as expected, a mix of fear and disbelief, like a deer before a collision. She tried to pull the sheets over herself, her hands trembling, but it was hopeless. It was too late for that. I took a step closer. The floor creaked beneath me as if the world were splitting open, and I was standing right on that edge. Lily made some pitiful sounds, trying to speak, to justify her actions. Her mouth moved as though searching for the right words, but it was pathetic. Honestly, it was laughable. "Michael, She leapt from the bed, as if some magic phrase could change everything, as if the right words could explain this nightmare. Her eyes darted around the room, desperately searching for an escape. But it was futile. This wasn't something that could be saved. The wreckage lay around us, irrevocable and complete. My gaze fell on the dresser. It stood there, taunting me, filled with souvenirs from the life that was supposed to be ours. My hands moved instinctively, driven by a surge of emotion. Perfumes, picture frames, trinkets from family vacations, every last sentimental item. I ran my hand over the surface. Glass shattered, perfume bottles exploded, and everything crashed to the floor. It felt like I was setting fire to everything that had ever held any value. Lily recoiled from the sound, clutching the sheets to her chest, as if they could protect her from the reality she had created. As if any of that mattered now. The mayor, this supposedly authoritative figure, fumbled with his clothes, his eyes wide and shining, like those of a child on the verge of tears. It was pitiful beyond measure, absolutely disgraceful. The power he held as mayor meant nothing at that moment. He looked at me as if he was about to beg for mercy, but I kept recording. I wanted them all to understand. The camera clicked, capturing every agonizing second. The sheriff wasn't in a better state either, his face pale as he fumbled with his shirt, unable to dress himself properly. His shirt has mismatched buttons, and his eyes dart around the room, deliberately avoiding my gaze. I watch him closely, noticing how his hands tremble, fumbling with the buttons, clearly revealing his crumbling composure. His lips part, likely to utter some clever remark, but today isn't the day for that. It can't be. Did you really think you could slip away from this? The words flow from my lips, quiet and steady, their unexpected weight surprising even me. You think I'll let this become just another scandal swept under the rug? The sheriff's face pales further, but he continues to struggle with his shirt as if it's his last lifeline. What a coward. The mayor hesitated for a moment, took a few steps, and then bolted. Classic move. He brushes past me, his shoulder barely grazing mine, without bothering to look at me or offer an apology. Nothing. Only the acrid stench of fear as he rushes away, running down the stairs like a rat fleeing a sinking ship. His hurried footsteps quickly fade, uneven and anxious. The sheriff follows, his hands shaking as he shoves his phone into his pocket, probably to text a lawyer or call in a favor to bury this incident. It almost seems funny to me. Almost. He stays silent. No words are needed. There are none. It's just as well they're gone. I capture every moment of this. The weight of my phone feels significant in my hand as I focus on her. Lily. She remains seated at the edge of the bed, clutching the sheets tightly against her chest, trembling like a leaf caught in a storm after those two scumbags fled. Her wide, glossy eyes search for something, maybe hope or a way out. But I don't worry about her. Her shirt hangs awkwardly as she tries to pull it over her shoulders, her fingers fumbling, almost numb. There's a bruise on her neck, a bite. I force myself to push those thoughts away. I focus on the camera, engaging in the cold, detached act of recording reality. Evidence. The very evidence I will use to ensure this costs her everything. Every ounce of freedom she enjoyed for the past 13 years while I worked late to feed the kids. I feel the urge to speak. Maybe. But no words come. Maybe they're not necessary. Words aren't what's needed right now. I catch a fleeting glimpse of a tear forming at the corner of her eye, and it ignites something deep inside me, something I thought had long since burned out. Anger flares up within me, raw and fierce, the kind that makes you want to scream until your voice is gone. But instead, I inhale. A sharp, deliberate breath. My chest rises and falls as if bracing for the ground to collapse beneath me. I want to sink my teeth into her, but my legs refuse to move. I know that if I take even one step closer, I might lose control, so I stay still. I stop the recording, watching her through the screen one last time as she curls into the twisted sheets. The very sheets Michael, please. Her voice trembles. It's the first word she's managed to say, but I barely register it. I turn away. The hallway feels eerily quiet, heavy with the weight of everything that just happened. I leave before she can say anything else, denying her the satisfaction of a tearful plea. What's the point? It's over for her. It's over for both of us. I descend the stairs. It feels like a slow, torturous march into hell, with everything around me burning. None of it matters. Keep moving. The wooden floors creak under my steps. Somewhere in the distance, a clock ticks. None of it matters at all. The front door swings open easily, as if the house itself is glad that I'm leaving. A gust of cold air crashes against me, sharp and piercing, bringing an internal shift. Instead of relief, the weight presses even harder. It's an overwhelming sensation. My gaze falls on the car parked in the driveway, and I sink into the driver's seat. A wave of memories floods in. All that I've poured into this chaotic life, every effort I made believing our foundation was solid. Marriage, children. Oh God, the children. My fingers tighten on the steering wheel. Thoughts whirl in a storm of responsibilities now laid out before me. Divorce, custody. I will be fair. There will be no yelling, no chaos in the courtroom. But she will not get a penny more than what the law allows. Not 1 cent more. I begin typing a message on my phone, the lawyer's address already etched into my memory. My thumb slides towards the legal phrasing that will turn this chaos into an official procedure. She will have no power over me anymore. I take a deep, stabilizing breath, freezing as my finger hovers over the screen. This is only the beginning. Now I'm sitting at the kitchen table, the cold light of the laptop illuminating the silence of the room. On the screen are carefully edited images I worked on for a long time, every detail crystal clear. Lily's bare skin next to those two lowlifes, the mayor with his bloated figure and the sheriff, whose smugness vanished when they realized what I was plotting. I shift in my chair, cracking my knuckles. I check the folder one last time to ensure everything is included. It doesn't matter if someone claims my actions are excessive. This is enough. Lily, the mayor, the sheriff. None of them deserve sympathy. No mercy. My finger hovers over the touchpad, and I take a deep, deliberate breath. The same kind I take before closing a major deal or asking an investor for millions. The calm before the storm. I press send. Watching those photos spread among the local group is like striking a match in a pile of dry leaves. Comments start pouring in almost immediately, like sparks igniting a fire. At first, they're typical reactions. What the hell? Lily with the mayor? That's the sheriff? No way. Then, the anger flares up. In small towns, people live off scandals, devouring this kind of news like air. We trusted these people. How could they? Lily, the kids, how could she betray her family? Disgusting. The mayor needs to resign immediately. I lean back in my chair, my hands steady. More comments keep coming, and the town's outrage becomes palpable. Is Antonio going to lose his badge over this? He better. We don't need this filth running our town. There's no turning back now. Screenshot after screenshot lights up in the notifications. The community devours this scandal like vultures on a carcass. Reputations built over years collapse in mere minutes. All the handshakes, photo ops, secret deals, they mean nothing now. The mayor, finished. The sheriff, ruined. I dedicated my entire life to studying numbers, watching the rises and falls of markets at the touch of a button. But the sense of satisfaction I feel now is incomparable to anything else. Observing the public downfall of these two figures, even if only metaphorically, brings me a strange pleasure. A few days later, I found myself fully immersed in a news article on my computer. The headlines screamed that the mayor had resigned, his statements reeking of insincerity. Apologies for a lapse in judgment? Oh, spare me. I couldn't suppress a smirk as I quickly scrolled through his pathetic attempts at justification. Shortly after, the sheriff followed suit, releasing an empty statement about losing the trust of the community and disappointing his family. Watching the meticulously built images crumble was a special kind of spectacle. Once influential, they had now turned into cautionary tales. It was hard not to take pleasure in their downfall. Their lives were ruined, their families turned their backs, and society abandoned them far faster than I had expected. It was like a slow-moving disaster, one I was observing from the front row. But the real drama was with Lily. The way people treated her now was cruel. I recently saw her in the grocery store, and it was like watching a ghost trying to blend in with the living. Everyone turned their heads in her direction, whispers trailing behind her. She tried her best to hold it together, but the shame was written all over her face. Once the pride of our small town, she had now become the object of ridicule. It would be dishonest to say that I didn't derive some satisfaction from it. In truth, I enjoyed it. But I had more important matters to attend to. The divorce consumed all my attention. As soon as the scandal broke, I immediately contacted my lawyer. I was determined to ensure that Lily would get as little as possible in the division of assets. Within days of her leaving, divorce papers were filed, and I removed her name from all our joint financial accounts. My rage dictated every decision I made. In the end, I kept the house, most of our savings, and control over our investments. However, the battle for custody of the children spiraled out of control. Lily was relentless in her pursuit of custody. In court, she portrayed herself as the more stable parent, and astonishingly, the judge believed her. When the ruling came in her favor, it was a gut punch. Though her infidelity had destroyed our marriage, it wasn't enough to prevent her from getting primary custody. Losing the children hurt far more than any financial loss. The house and money seemed insignificant compared to their absence. Now, I'm left with only visitation rights and a constant ache every time I return the children to Lily. On paper, I may have won. I kept the house, the money, and my independence. But what's the value of all that when I've lost what truly mattered? Nevertheless, life goes on. I had to start anew. I sold the house, too many memories of the past, and moved into a sleek apartment in the city. It's modern, with a minimalist aesthetic, a stark contrast to the suburban life I once knew. Every day feels like a fresh start. I immerse myself in work, enjoying the freedom this new chapter of life offers. For the first time in a long while, I feel a sense of clarity, as though a weight has been lifted off my shoulders. I've even started seeing someone new, Sarah. She's kind and genuine. When I look into her eyes, I don't see the betrayal that haunted me in Lily's gaze. It's refreshing, simple, a welcome relief from the chaos of the past. Yet, no matter how hard I try to move forward, the pain of losing custody still lingers. Every time the children mention their mother's house, it's like a knife in my gut, a constant reminder that some wounds remain unhealed, no matter how successful you are in other aspects of life. I focus on what I have, the weekends with the children, and do everything I can to cherish every moment spent with them. We spend time in the park, enjoy evening movies, and build pillow forts, activities that once brought us joy before everything fell apart. But when Sunday evening comes, and it's time to take them back to Lily, I feel like I'm losing something all over again. The hardest part is seeing how this situation affects them. They're too young to fully understand what's going on, but they can sense the changes. They pick up on the tension and the quiet conversations happening around them. Sometimes I catch their gaze, filled with unspoken questions I struggle to answer. How do you explain to children that their mother betrayed not just me, but our entire family? How do you shield them from the harsh realities of infidelity and scandal in a small town where everyone is connected? I try to create the illusion of normalcy for them. I refuse to speak ill of Lily in their presence, even though the urge to express my feelings is overwhelming. They love her, and I won't take that away from them, even though it tears me apart inside. Still, it's an enormous struggle. It's incredibly hard to smile and pretend everything is fine when I bring them to the house of the woman who destroyed our family. Watching them run into her arms, knowing what she's done and how capable she is of hurting us, is simply unbearable. In my darkest moments, I wonder if I did the right thing by publicly exposing the affair. Would it have been easier for the kids if I had stayed silent, handled it more quietly? But then I remember the look on Lily's face when she realized I knew everything, and the desperate efforts of the mayor and the sheriff to protect their reputations. I know I couldn't have done it any other way. They say the best revenge is to live well. I'm trying to embrace that idea. I found a new apartment, I got a job, and Sarah is by my side. I'm beginning to rebuild my life. But the emptiness still lingers, the longing for the family I once knew. I glance at the clock. It's almost time to pick up the kids for our weekend. I grab my keys, take a deep breath, and step outside. Another weekend where I have to squeeze a week's worth of love and attention into 2 days. Another Sunday where I have to painfully let them go again. This is my new reality. It's not what I imagined, not what I dreamed of, but it's the life I have now. For the sake of my kids, I will do everything I can to make the most of it, even if that means setting aside my pride, anger, and pain every time I face Lily. Because in the end, the most important thing is my children, not the money, not the house, and not even the satisfaction of watching Lily's life fall apart. Only my kids and the love I have for them. That's what drives me now. That's what keeps me going. It's been 2 years since I divorced Lily. Sarah moved in with me, and I continued picking up the kids on weekends. But everything changed in an instant when I got a call from the school saying Lily hadn't picked up the kids. I panicked and rushed to the school. Lily had never been careless with the kids. We went to her house, but no one answered the door. We went back to my place, as Lily wasn't answering her phone, and at 8 p.m., the police called to inform me that Lily was dead. She had been driving drunk and lost control of the car. The following weeks were hard for all of us, but thankfully the kids accepted Sarah well. I didn't know whether to cry or feel relieved, but I know one thing. I'm happy the kids are with me again. As for Lily, that was her fate. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel. Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. The disappearance of my wife in the midst of the lively atmosphere of the party struck me as extremely strange, especially considering that my grandfather's enormous house was full of rooms. Nevertheless, I continued searching for her, opening one door after another, as if she had simply dissolved into the stuffy, thick air of the place. I couldn't shake the hope that she hadn't gotten lost or felt overwhelmed by the unfamiliar setting of the house. It was her first time attending such a family gathering, and I silently prayed that nothing would go wrong. I opened yet another door, not really expecting much at this point, as it seemed like my 10th attempt. But when I opened this final door, I found something completely unexpected. That day, my wife and I were supposed to celebrate my grandfather's 80th birthday under a clear sky and in warm weather. We were well aware that my grandfather, known for his boundless energy and youthful spirit, would try to make this day unforgettable. He had such a passion for life that a few years ago, he even skipped our wedding, choosing instead to go on a trip with his friends. This time he was determined to make amends and finally meet my wife. I had warned her in advance that my grandfather was nothing like ordinary grandparents. He was a free spirit, always seeking new adventures and never aging in soul. On the way to the party, I mentioned that many of the guests would likely be younger than us, people he had met when they were teenagers. I even joked that we might encounter his significantly younger companion, who would probably be wearing something far too revealing. When we arrived at the grand hall, my grandfather's booming laughter filled the space, spreading joy throughout the room. His energy seemed to light up the place, drawing everyone's attention. He greeted us with a wide smile and a mischievous sparkle in his eyes, clearly delighted by our arrival. I could never fully tell how genuine his smile was, as he had a habit of suddenly shifting from cheerfulness to quiet mumbling. Nevertheless, I hugged him tightly, feeling somewhat unsure but trying to show my feelings. My wife was immediately charmed by his charisma when they exchanged greetings. He had a knack for instantly easing any tension with his presence, and she quickly fell under his spell. It seemed like he had a natural ability to connect with people effortlessly. I watched as her admiration grew, as if she were drawn into his orbit. She was amazed by how easily he could relate to both the young and the old. Grandfather was a master of communication through his eccentric humor and wit, effortlessly breaking down any barriers. His love for life was undeniable, and his positive energy was contagious. My wife seemed almost hypnotized by him, realizing that age didn't matter and that the secret to eternal youth was in one's mindset. Yet, I couldn't shake the growing unease as I observed her becoming more and more influenced by him. As the evening progressed, her fascination with my grandfather became increasingly troubling. I quietly suggested she tone down her enthusiasm a bit, but she was captivated by his charm. She even teased me, accusing me of lacking his spontaneity and childlike zest. I realized it was time to set some boundaries, gently reminding her that despite his youthful spirit, he was still my grandfather. The party was in full swing, with lively music playing and couples swirling and dancing around the room. Suddenly, my wife turned to my grandfather and invited him to dance. I thought it was just a harmless gesture, something fun between family members. At first, they simply enjoyed the music and the moment, but gradually their interaction started to take on an inappropriate tone. What began as innocent fun turned into something unsettling. Their connection on the dance floor developed a vibe that didn't seem fitting, given their relationship. They continued dancing, fully absorbed in each other and the rhythm of the music, as if unaware that they had crossed a certain boundary. I stood on the sidelines, feeling a mix of confusion, embarrassment, and anxiety. I was torn between wanting to intervene and not wanting to make a scene, desperately searching for a way to stop them without escalating the situation. My mind was swirling with emotions. Gathering all my courage, I quietly approached them just as the music began to fade. I waited for the melody to end before gently placing my hand on my grandfather's shoulder. Leaning in, I suggested we take a break from dancing and join the other guests for some conversation. Sensing my unease, both my wife and grandfather agreed, oblivious to the reactions their dancing had caused among those around us. We moved to a more private spot, away from prying eyes, to talk about the importance of setting boundaries and considering others' feelings. When my wife opened her mouth to say something, I interrupted her, feeling there was more I needed to express. As she turned to leave, I grabbed her hand, looking directly into her eyes, and warned her that if she crossed my boundaries again, tonight or any other night, she wouldn't be coming home with me. She objected, saying that my actions were hurting her, but in my anger, I couldn't control my emotions. I pushed her away and left, fearing that if I stayed, I might do something even worse. Leaving her standing in the hallway, I quickly walked away. Guilt washed over me, but instead of facing her, I decided to drown my anxiety with a few drinks. Immersed in the energy of the party, I felt the alcohol dulling my emotions. Though the room was filled with laughter and celebration, I couldn't shake the feeling of anxiety gnawing at me from the inside. My thoughts kept returning to my wife as I slammed my glass down on the bar. Suddenly, I realized she had been gone for a long time. Panic gripped me as I scanned the room, searching for her in the crowd. The guilt I had suppressed earlier resurfaced, now mixed with fear. I pushed through the crowd, shouting her name, but there was no response. I searched frantically, but the once lively rooms now seemed eerily quiet. With every passing second, my fear grew stronger. Time seemed to slow, each minute feeling like an eternity as regrets and doubts swirled in my mind. How had I let myself lose control so completely? I berated myself for failing her as a partner, the weight of shame hanging over me like a suffocating fog. Bitterness boiled within me, her refusal still fresh in my memory. I grew tired of opening door after door, only to be met with disappointment. Yet I stood before another door, unsure if I could bear what lay behind it. A sense of hopelessness weighed me down, but a faint flicker of determination remained, urging me to try once more. I opened the door, bracing myself for yet another painful discovery. What I saw on the other side of the door exceeded my worst fears. To my horror, I found my wife tied up on the bed, and in the corner of the room, standing in the shadows, was my grandfather. I was utterly unprepared for such a shocking sight. I had always known about his issues with younger women, but seeing him there with my wife was beyond comprehension. The fact that she seemed to want it destroyed me. A torrent of emotions, shame, disgust, betrayal, overwhelmed me. I felt betrayed not just by her, but by him as well. The scene was repulsive. Staring at them in disbelief, I felt like they were looking at me as if I had disturbed their peace. I wanted to strike out, to make them feel the pain they were causing me, but I held back, realizing that if they had any shred of conscience, they wouldn't have gone this far. All I could manage to say was a shocked, "What the hell?" in an attempt to understand how my wife could go along with this, as if trying to convince me that it wasn't her choice. I stood there, stunned, trying to process what I was seeing. My grandfather was still hovering over my wife, looking lost, his eyes vacant. Not a word escaped his lips during those agonizing moments. Finally, gathering my strength, I asked him, "Do you have anything to say?" His hand clutched his chest, his face had gone pale, and sweat beaded on his forehead. I stood firm, leaning on my hip, and said, "Now's your chance to play the greatest role of your life." I was unmoved by his remorse for what he had done with my wife. After a brief pause, he collapsed onto her. At first, I thought he was pretending again, as he often did. But when my wife, having lost all dignity, screamed for him to get off her because she could no longer bear his weight, I realized that this time, he wasn't faking it. After betraying me with my own grandfather, my wife had the nerve to look at me as if expecting help. I had always known that I wouldn't grieve my grandfather's death, but I hadn't anticipated feeling relieved. I approached, checked his pulse, and coldly said, "He's dead," then turned away. She called after me, asking where I was going, leaving her there. I replied that I was leaving behind both my grandfather and his final disgrace. Flinging the door open wide, I saw guests scattered around the house enjoying the festivities. I shouted, "Come and see what Grandpa was up to in his final moments." I stepped aside, leaning against the wall as she began to wail. Her horror grew as she realized she had let him tie her down out of sheer greed. My words drew the crowd, and the guests rushed into the room, drawn by her cries. When they entered, she completely broke down, cursing me and everyone around her, begging to be untied. Even in death, my grandfather seemed alive in his final scandal, as his guests began documenting the scene. The spectacle of an 80-year-old man dying in the arms of his grandson's wife was too shocking not to capture. Within minutes, my wife's disgrace had spread across the internet, and it was not something she could easily come to terms with. She tried to hide her face, but it was already too late. The guests, at first shocked to witness such a moment, started taking pictures and sharing them. Laughter soon filled the room as they began mocking the absurdity of the situation. I clapped my hands to get their attention and thanked them for being witnesses to this show. Satisfied with the public humiliation of my wife, I decided the show was over and asked everyone to leave. As they left the house, I looked at her and said, "Not a bad performance, wouldn't you say?" Then I left her there, sobbing next to my grandfather's lifeless body, still calling out to me for help. As I left the family estate, I felt the weight of despair hanging over me like a storm. It wasn't just the crumbling walls or the fading memories that weighed on me, but the agonizing reality that the two people closest to me, my wife and my grandfather, had betrayed me. As I stepped outside, I felt a surge of anger rise within me, fueled by their betrayal. I couldn't comprehend how they could do this to me. I was overwhelmed by how they had managed to orchestrate their treacherous betrayal right under my nose. The all-consuming sense of deception and the exposure of their lies before my very eyes only fueled my rage. But as I moved farther away from the estate, a strange sense of clarity began to pierce through the clouds of anger in my mind. I began to see the intricate web they had woven, carefully planning their betrayal right in the middle of a celebration that was meant to be ours. It had all been premeditated. The signs had always been there, but I was too caught up in my own happiness to notice them. In the ensuing silence, I shut myself off, ignoring the questions of those around me. Lost in my thoughts for days, I tried to come to terms with the shattered remnants of my trust. Then came the news of the funeral. The death of a close relative pulled me back into the family, forcing me to confront the chaos of grief and the rage bubbling inside me. At first, I resisted the idea of attending. Why should I honor someone who had so cruelly betrayed me? But beneath the pain remained a small part of me yearning for closure, a desire to free myself from the chains of bitterness and anger. I craved closure, the kind that only comes when you face harsh truths head-on. In the end, I decided to attend the funeral, even though the weight of my grief seemed to obstruct every step. It wasn't about forgiveness or sudden enlightenment. Rather, I was driven by the need to reclaim my strength and regain control over my emotions, which pushed me to take action. As I stood before the casket, my initial feelings of rage and helplessness slowly gave way to a deep sadness, interwoven with a new sense of determination. When it was time to deliver the eulogy, I spoke from the heart, allowing my words to reflect the truth of my experience. I made a conscious choice to let go of the betrayal that had burdened me for so long, and in that decision, I took the first step toward healing. As I left the funeral hall, I felt a small spark of hope, a feeling that had been foreign to me for quite some time. Though I knew my journey to recovery had only just begun, I had made an important step forward. Leaving behind the pain and lies, I made a firm promise to myself to rebuild my life with newfound strength, with perseverance in my heart, and renewed faith in my own worth. The divorce was swift, and she was left with nothing, as outlined in our prenuptial agreement. There was no need for evidence of her infidelity. Everyone knew what she had done to me. Now, her life in this town will not be easy. She has disgraced herself, lost her dignity, and forfeited the respect of others. I regret having spent 7 years of my life on a woman who so easily gave herself to a wealthy, older man the day they met. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel.